everyone. Welcome back to Routine English Podcast.
We're so glad you could join us today. We have a great show lined up.
Have you ever sat in a doctor's waiting room, staring at those faded health posters, and just felt that profound, chilling anxiety? Not about the diagnosis, but about whether you'll actually be heard?
Heard? Sure. But anxiety about being heard usually translates to anxiety about getting the answer you want. Let's be clinical about this, Sophia. We go to a medical professional for efficiency.
Efficiency at the cost of empathy, Alex. Think about the statistic. Studies show that physicians interrupt the patient's opening statement, their chief complaint, on average within 11 seconds. 11 seconds. That's the hook.
That's also a product of optimized triage. If the initial complaint points strongly toward a common diagnosis, time is saved by focusing the narrative, not allowing it to wander into irrelevant family history or anecdotal tangents.
But isn't the tangent often where the critical, subtle clue hides? We're talking about the phenomenon of medical gaslighting, where subjective symptoms, especially chronic pain or fatigue, are dismissed because they don't fit the neat diagnostic flowchart.
That's a powerful term, medical gaslighting. And while it certainly occurs, we need context. We're in a system where the average primary care appointment is scheduled for 7 to 10 minutes. That's a system constraint, not always an empathy failure.
Exactly. The clock dictates the interaction, and we as patients internalize that ticking. We rush our symptoms, we minimize our pain because we feel like we are imposing on the physician's precious schedule.
From the physician's side, they are balancing diagnostic accuracy, charting requirements, insurance mandates, and the backlog of 40 other patients waiting that day. They are practicing triage efficiency.
Triage efficiency often results in standardized testing for nuanced problems. You come in with a complicated presentation and you walk out with the same blood panel everyone else gets because it's the fastest way to rule out the big three.
But that's good medicine initially. Rule out the acute, life-threatening issues first. If you present with nonspecific abdominal discomfort, starting with a general panel is the logical, evidence-based approach.
But what if the issue is subtle, systemic, or psychological? The moment you mention stress or anxiety, the clipboard snaps shut, and suddenly the physical symptoms become secondary to the presumed mental state.
Hold on. That assumption that doctors automatically default to it's just stress is often anecdotal. They are trained to see the interaction between mind and body, but they must also rule out the physical before confirming the psychological. That's the hierarchy of safety.
But the delivery matters, Alex. When a doctor maintains eye contact with their laptop screen more than your face, you feel like a data input, not a person in pain. That's the core disconnect.
That's the tyranny of the electronic health record, or EHR. Physicians spend over 2 hours charting for every 1 hour they spend with patients. The laptop is their mandated partner, unfortunately.
So we're trapped in this vicious cycle. The technology designed to make records better actually makes the patient interaction worse, contributing to diagnostic delay for those with nonlinear symptoms.
Let's dive into that delay. The real challenge is the base rate fallacy. Doctors see hundreds of coughs and colds. They train their brains to recognize patterns. When a rare condition mimics a common one, that pattern recognition, which is usually helpful, becomes a liability.
Exactly. The cognitive bias is built into the frequency. If 99 out of 100 headaches are tension headaches, the physician has to actively fight their training to consider the 1% possibility of a subarachnoid hemorrhage.
They do fight it through established protocol. But the data shows the vast majority of diagnostic errors stem from failures in history taking, not physical exam or lab interpretation. Your initial point about the 11-second interruption is chillingly relevant here.
It means the doctor is formulating their hypothesis almost immediately, and then spending the rest of the visit seeking information that confirms that hypothesis rather than challenging it. Confirmation bias in action.
Which brings us back to the patient's role. If the patient isn't prepared, if they haven't synthesized their symptoms into a concise, relevant timeline, they are contributing to the physician's need to interrupt and guide.
Are we now blaming the patient for not being trained medical narrators? That's unfair. When you are ill, you are inherently vulnerable, disorganized, and often scared.
It's not blame, it's advocacy. Going to the doctor requires preparation. A bulleted list of symptoms, timeline, and key medications maximizes the utility of that 7-minute window.
I agree that preparation helps, but it shouldn't be mandatory just to get a basic level of care. We shouldn't have to hire a medical escort just to ensure our doctor lifts their gaze from the screen.
The escort, or patient advocate, is becoming standard practice, specifically because the system is overwhelmed. It's a sad reality of modern industrialized medicine.
It implies we need a translator between the patient's subjective reality and the doctor's objective metrics.
Precisely. Because the language of pain is emotional, but the language of diagnostics must be measurable.
And when the measurement tools fail, when the labs come back normal, that's when the patient is often relegated to the difficult or somatizing file.
Let's be specific about difficult. Doctors dread the patient who has self-diagnosed extensively on Google before walking in. It creates immediate defensive posturing.
But isn't the patient who researches often trying to compensate for the fact that they feel rushed and unheard? They are looking for context that the doctor didn't provide.
It's a feedback loop of mistrust. The patient distrusts the efficiency, researches excessively, and presents a complex, often incorrect self-diagnosis. The doctor then distrusts the patient's data presentation.
We need to break that loop. And that requires physicians being trained not just in medicine, but in deep listening and acknowledging uncertainty.
Uncertainty is the enemy of the system. The system demands certainty for billing codes and treatment plans,
which leads to unnecessary antibiotics or rushed prescriptions just to provide a concrete solution to a complex, ambiguous problem.
I can't dispute that therapeutic momentum often overtakes genuine caution. Prescribing something is easier and faster than admitting, I don't know yet, let's wait and see.
So let's pivot. We've established the patient's dilemma and the system's burden, but there's a crucial layer we haven't touched, the sheer cognitive burnout the doctor faces.
Ah, the twist. I'm listening. We assume the doctor is simply rushed, but you're suggesting something else is happening under the hood.
It's called decision fatigue. Think about a doctor seeing 20 patients. Each interaction requires high-stakes diagnostic decisions, filtering masses of data, and managing emotional expectations.
The mental load.
Exactly. Research shows that diagnostic accuracy significantly dips later in the day, not because the doctor stops caring, but because the mental energy required to fight cognitive biases, that confirmation bias we mentioned, is depleted.
So if you get the 8 a.m. slot, your doctor is fresh, rested, and operating at peak analytical capacity. If you get the 4 p.m. slot, they are relying more heavily on heuristics and fast pattern recognition.
It's a powerful, scary revelation. Your chance of a correct, nuanced diagnosis is literally dictated by the time of day you manage to book your appointment. It's an endurance test for the physician.
That explains why the late-day patient who presents with a subtle, atypical symptom is at the highest risk for error. The doctor simply doesn't have the mental reserves left to do the deep dive required.
And this is compounded by what's termed the halo effect in medicine. If the patient is seen as compliant, articulate, and generally healthy, the physician might prematurely minimize serious symptoms.
Conversely, the horn effect. If the patient has a history of non-compliance, substance abuse, or chronic anxiety, new, legitimate physical symptoms might be automatically discounted as psychological or self-inflicted.
It's a social contract frayed by stress and systemic failure. The visit to the doctor's office is meant to be a sanctuary, but it often feels like a cross-examination.
The core realization here is that the problems aren't necessarily individual failures of empathy, but predictable outcomes of an economic and scheduling model designed for maximum throughput, not maximum nuance.
So what do? How do we reclaim that essential human connection and safeguard against the systemic biases?
For the patient, preparation, documentation, and the confidence to gently redirect the physician if you feel interrupted or rushed. Respect their time, but fiercely protect your narrative.
And for the system, we must advocate for longer appointment slots and acknowledge that administrative time is clinical time. The laptop charting shouldn't be happening during the patient's story.
Ultimately, the health system needs to move from viewing the patient-physician interaction as a 7-minute transaction to recognizing it as the critical diagnostic crucible it truly is.
That interaction holds the key to the solution. It's about trust, time, and the painful recognition that sometimes what you don't say is just as important as what you do.
A fascinating, if anxiety-inducing, look behind the curtain of the clinical encounter. Thank you, Sophia.
Thank you, Alex. And remember, advocating for your health starts before you even sit on that crinkly paper.
Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
See you next time on the Routine English Podcast.